and Vegorx. We are here today to talk to you about
Crystal Chronicles.
Final Fantasy, the Crystal Chronicles. One of the last things that Square-Enix made that I found tolerable.
And on the GameCube, nonetheless.
GameCube, nonetheless, of all places. Tonight we're drinking... What the hell are we drinking?
We're drinking a leftover Christmas ale from Great Lakes Brewing.
Leftover? You make it sound so appetizing. Yeah.
It's
Christmas ale, the Great Lakes Brewing Company.
It was bottled, it was capped, it's fine.
Leftover notwithstanding, it's better than it looks. Give it a try.
Yeah, there's actually a lot to say about Crystal Chronicles.
You keep saying that. That's why we're saying this.
We're saying this. The first thing that I'm going to touch on is...
before he touches on anything and stuff, we said Square-Enix. It's GameCube exclusive. 2003 was the year this was published.
Mm-hmm.
It is a action-adventure role-playing game is how they describe it. Kind of hack and slashy in the single player, but where this game really shines is multiplayer. And now I'm going to turn the floor over.
All right, the multiplayer was a unique aspect to the game because it used the Game Boy Advance with the link cable. And I understand why they did it. It was just hard because if you wanted to play with your friends, you had to have at least another or two Game Boy Advances. And if you had 4 people, everyone needed one. The link cables.
And the link cables, too, yeah.
So it could get to be a pricey endeavor. But
ultimately, worth it.
Worth it. It gives you your inventory screen, and I can see why they did it, because you don't want someone pausing the action mid-thing. I need an item, I need to do this. It kind of does it on the fly. However, pausing the action still occurs because one person has to carry a chalice around to protect the group from poison.
Can't tell you how often I'm looking through my bag for a spell or some Phoenix Down, and this son of a bitch is carrying off with the chalice and the poison air.
To be fair, though, if you're in the menu, it does kind of pull you along.
Yeah.
However, you got clipping issues with buildings and fences and whatnot, and sometimes monsters just attack you too.
We said GameCube. This was a while ago. Hopefully those things are better these days.
Hopefully. Playing with the DS is much better than playing with the GameCube controller.
I disagree, but I'm going to let him talk first.
For the only reason of combos. Combos chain better. The timing. The buttons just feel good and right for it. However, the GameCube controller feels more comfortable. And I found that combos were a little harder to get off. Like, the timing. The same timing.
I think you just need to buy those combos a drink beforehand or something.
But a lot of this game is timing.
And again, I disagree about the controls. I mean, they're still very tight on the Game Boy Advance. The characters do what you want. But you definitely get the feel in this 3D environment that moving your characters was designed with the intent of the joystick on the GameCube controller. Switching then down to the D-pad that you have on the Game Boy Advance, moving at an angle sometimes is a lot less intuitive. It's a little slower to react.
It doesn't feel as nice.
It doesn't feel anywhere near as natural or as nice.
But as far as like the actual pressing of your buttons, it's very spot on. I think a little more responsive. That's just where I was going with that.
Maybe I had a inferior off-brand link cable, so it wasn't exactly as responsive for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Don't buy third party if you can help it.
Ever.
Never. That being said...
I'm sorry, I was a teenager. I was poor.
We were all poor when we were teenagers. Yeah, we're dated. Anyways...
but we're cheap dates.
The game is very playable single player, but multiplayer is where it shines, and this is one of those few times where I prefer the multiplayer to the single player. You even have access to stuff that you don't get single player spells.
The highest level spells. Yeah.
Highest level spells. And if you're playing let's touch on that. There are how many races? 4.
Lilties, Ukes. Am I pronouncing this right? Klavits, and the Selkies.
Mm-hmm.
Prepare yourself for fantastic racism.
That's right. Anyways, the mages...
literally, if you go into the Selkie village, anything other than a Selkie, they will pick your pocket and steal items from you.
Yes, they do. The Ukes are your... basically your casting. And you can play any class that this game offers.
The races and classes are tied together.
Right.
Your Lilty is always going to be your tank, even though he's the guy up front with a 2-handed polearm. No, that's not entirely true.
He's your damage dealer.
He's your melee damage dealer. Your Clavet is your tank with the sword and shield combo. He's your frontline fighter. Your Uke is always standing back casting, and
your Selkie is just there to look pretty because their stats are just...
Well, see, the thing is, each of the races is tied to a stat. The Clavats, it's their defense. The Lilties, it's their attack skill. The Ukes, it's their magic skill. The Selkies are tied inextricably to their dexterity and speed skill. They run around like motherfuckers.
Doesn't really play anything except
Yes,
for avoiding attacks.
No. They're the chalice bearer. Because they can run around and pick up other group members that have fallen behind or gotten too far ahead or whatever. That's their purpose. That's the role they play.
No one ever wanted to play one.
I liked playing it. They were pretty.
But you could also
you wanted to be an onion with a bucket knight helm.
Damn straight. But you can tailor your characters any way you want. And the grinding in this does kind of suffer a little bit because you go through the same area repeatedly to get your one stat boost at the end of it. And then you got to hope some other fucker in the group doesn't take it.
That was actually one of the areas where the single player came in handy, especially if you were the person who owned the game and your friends were the ones coming over. You could grind out the areas early on and get all of the goodies, so when your friends came over, you could be monogamous and say, no, you can have that, I don't need it.
So the story goes, poison's covering the
miasma has coated the earth? World.
I don't know.
It's not Earth.
But every year, caravanners go out to get drops of myrrh to...
Taking a step back. The world is covered in this toxic miasma, which spawns monsters. You can't breathe when you're out there or you start taking
The miasma spawn monsters? I thought monsters just kind of moved into places.
Chicken and egg. Where there's miasma, there's monsters. There are protected zones that have these giant crystals, hence the Crystal Chronicles. And in these crystal areas, these fields of influence, the poisonous mists cannot penetrate and the monsters don't go where there's no poisonous mists. The thing is, the crystal's power depletes over time. So
and that's
once
where the
a year,
caravanners come from. And the caravanners go out to go get these drops of myrrh from your dungeon area. Yep. To fill up the chalice and bring it back, and they have a big celebration
where they recharge the main crystal in town.
The town survives for another year. Life is good. And I actually think it's quite interesting to see there's a map where it's a town where the caravanners failed. You go there, it's overwhelmed with monsters. It's just run down, dilapidated. It is a delightful
fungus everywhere.
stage.
It's
Beautiful. Beautifully done.
I'm going to have a little asterisk next to the beautifully done.
The Monster House?
Not even that. The graphics don't withstand the test of time. It's for its time period, for the time that it came out, early 2000s. This is a gorgeous game. This is pushing the GameCube to the limits of what it was capable of doing. Today, it looks kind of clunky, and you can see polygons.
And I think that has the advent of HD TVs, 4K TVs.
Yeah, it was never made for HD TV, plasma screen, whatever.
But it's still very playable, and I would recommend it to anyone, honestly.
If you can find a copy.
And those link cables and the GBAs.
Even the single player is worth just tooling.
It really is. Aside from that, it's an action RPG.
Yeah. Very run around, hack and slash, run up, hit the monster.
It's got your classic Final Fantasy monsters like bombs,
flans.
The flans.
Yep.
It's got the
goblins,
chocobos. It does have a lot of classic monsters in it.
I don't remember chocobos in this game.
Wait, what? Oh no, those are the yaks.
They have the weird yak things.
Yeah, I thought I was mistaken myself. I'm thinking of something else. And memories play a big part in this game.
Yes, as you're traveling around the overworld, you'll have these random events, almost always at crossroads, where you'll encounter these other players. And this is where the real story, the meat of the game unfolds. The gameplay is nice and entertaining and what you're here for. But the story happens in these little random encounters where you run into other caravans or this mysterious Black Knight character because we want to hit all of the over-the-top tropes that are tired and beaten up.
And they get logged into a journal for you to review at the end of the year when you bring back the chalice.
Yeah, as the party's going on and everybody's dancing around the big bonfire, you read your journal and are reminded of all of the things that happened. And you can access this journal from the pause menu at any time.
Yep.
Although if you're going to be sitting reading the journal in the middle of combat, because as he kind of touched on, combat doesn't stop if you're in multiplayer and you have to open the menu. Your friends have to protect you while your friends have to protect you while you have the menu open. You're kind of a dick if you're reading the journal.
You really are. But most of the time you're basically fiddling for an item or switching your magic or something around.
Or desperately trying to find a Phoenix down for your Selkie friend who decided to go in and melee the boss.
Yep. But when you make your character, you have family, and at the end of each Myrrh dungeon, when you actually collect a drop of Myrrh, you send letters back home. They send you items, and it's a way to...
It's another layer of story that gives your character some background and depth. It's all right. It could have been better.
It could have been better,
but
you get some of the best materials in the game by doing so for your crafting, because you have to craft everything and you have to have the plans for it.
It's not necessarily true. I've found... No, that's right. You have to craft everything. No, there are some merchants in some of the towns that will have this stuff pre-crafted, but it's usually low-level copper junk.
It only goes so far, but you really do have to craft it. And finding the plans can be a pain.
But goes back to what we said about something being grindy and having to go through it over and over again. And if he picks up the plans I need, I'm out of luck.
Yeah, but it's also a process to turn it over. You got to go in the menu. It just slows everything down.
It creates an element of realism, but that's not what we're playing a video game for.
And then, if you're sitting there at a shop and everyone else is ready to go, they have to wait on your ass because...
It creates an element of realism, but realism is not what we're here for.
We're here for fantasy, action, and crab bosses and whatnot.
Oh, yeah. Catchy music.
That's something that we wanted to touch on.
That's what I was saying about earlier about the touch on the little single player a little bit. Mm-hmm. If you're going to do all of this upgrading thing and the rest of your party doesn't want to step out for a smoke break while you talk to the blacksmith, then, the best thing for you to do is sit down single player after your friends have left and
do all the crafting.
Get the upgrading and the crafting done then. You were starting to touch on music, I think.
Music. There is... I believe 2 vocal tracks, maybe 1.
The opening is definitely
a vocal track, and each area that you go to is also gets a little narration piece as well, which is a nice touch. That's the only voice acting in the game, but the music is it's got a Celtic theme, and it is just wonderful. It really sets the mood.
It's a little bit more than just a Celtic theme. There's some.
A lot of it is, though.
A lot of it is. A lot of it was inspiration. A lot of it was some traditional medieval musical pieces, and a lot of the instruments you hear are traditional European medieval, like reed recorders and panpipes and stuff.
You do get a kazoo solo in one stage.
Kazoo solo is a thing.
It's a thing, and it's good.
The world is better for it.
The world is better for it. I actually wrote down here a few tracks that just really stick out.
If you're bored, look these up. They're worth a listen.
Yep. We can actually include a link to them. Across the Divide is the final area. Everything's built up to this final area, and it's a great track for it. There's a place called Magmel. It's got the carbuncles, and it's a very lazy, sleep-sounding place. Very whimsical. That's the word I'm looking for.
Whimsical and lazy don't usually go together.
You think of the carbuncles and whatnot. It's just...
I think of carbuncles, I go straight to Vampire Hunter D.
The carbuncles in this game are actually nothing like any of the other Final Fantasy carbuncles. They're very large creatures. And then Veilloux Sluice, another good one. Yeah. And then the first and second form of the final fights. Mm-hmm. The first one's called Sad Monster, and that's like full bagpipes. It's great. And the second phase is called Unite Descent, and it's got lots of drums, and it's well done. Actually, when we play Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, tabletop games, we often come to Crystal Chronicles for some background music because it really sets the tone.
Mm-hmm. I mean, not much else to add. Like you said, it's got the traditional monsters. We've got the marble up front is one of the boss monsters. It's fantastic. Yeah, Creoles are all over the place, and you have to get the. Is that how you Creole? No, that's a French
Corels.
Creole maybe.
Yeah,
the Creole is like somebody from Louisiana.
It's like the tiger thing with the very long whiskers.
Yes.
Yeah, I call them Corels.
Corals, okay. They're all over the place, and you do have to harvest their whiskers.
You do. That being said, there was 5 other games? Or 5 in total?
No, 5 other games. This it spawned a series, a metaverse, whatever you want to call it. It's got a prequel, a direct sequel on the Wii U, 2...
Wii, not Wii U.
On the Wii, I'm sorry, yeah. 2 games that were on that are semi-direct sequels on the 3DS, not the 3DS, the regular DS. And then a bunch of just straight WiiWare games. Not a bunch of, 2.
2.
We don't touch on the WiiWare games.
They're tower defense and a...
One is a tower defense
town
game.
simulator.
A town builder is how it's described. He's played them. I haven't. I don't intend to play them based on his descriptions.
I mean, they're nothing really to write home about.
Time killers, mostly.
The DS games are not really good either. They suffer a lot. Actually, I think
it suffers mostly from being on the DS because it tries to, from what I read, it tries to be the same hack and slash feel.
The one that shares the DS and the GameCube or the Wii title,
Echoes of Time.
On the GameCube, they put both fucking screens on your screen, and you have to switch between them by pressing a button. Never. Don't. Stop.
That's
bad times.
I'd say Nintendo, I expect better of you, but I'm going
to
lay this on Square-Enix.
It wasn't Nintendo, it was Square.
It's a bad port. This is one of the many reasons we don't like you guys.
And then there was the
direct sequel on the Wii, which I've played. It's the Crystal Bearers. And it's a direct sequel that's 400 years later. So Civilization has had time to build up. Instead of being a straight fantasy game where you're running around, with swords and staves and riding a caravan, there's all this future tech.
Motion control.
I'm getting to that.
Future tech.
Now, future tech, like you got flying steamships and monorails, and it's an entirely different feel, and it...
Don't crash the airship in Alphateria.
You can't help but crash the airship in Alphateria. That's a key story event. But it's got a very different sort of steampunky feel to it, and I mean, it's pretty for what it is, but it suffers greatly from, as he said, it's got the Wii motion controls. A lot of the game is you flinging your Wiimote at the screen and then pulling back or moving it around, because instead of swords and stuff, your player character, you have to play as this one character. You don't get to make a character as in the previous titles. And he's a crystal bearer, which means he has crystals embedded in his body, and they give him powers. In his case, it's telekinesis. And you use it to throw stuff at your enemies to do damage, or throw your enemies at each other to do damage, or throw them into walls or off of cliffs or whatever. And it's clunky, and it's difficult to do, and it's gimmicky, and it makes the whole thing suffer overall. A lot of it really feels like what they call a visual novel, where you're just clicking through dialogue, and most of I think the A button stuff is put in there just to give you something to do. There's no reason these characters couldn't just talk to each other for these 20-minute cutscenes.
There's a time and a place for 20-minute cutscenes.
It's
the middle of the game is not.
No. Middle of the game, start of the game, end of the game, and so on and so forth. Middle of combat.
Yeah.
And it's lousy with quick time events, and it's... If you're in it for the story, more power to you. Play the hell out of it. It's a good story. Visually, very nice. The music continues the same thing, including variations on the themes for the music for the first game. If you're in it to play a game, dunk your head in the toilet and then go throw in the first Crystal Chronicles. You'll have a much better time.
That being said, Square-Enix. We have newer technology, newer software to make a better version of it. And I know you can do it.
Let me clarify. We don't want a reboot. We want a remastering.
Remastering, or even, well...
Another direct sequel that's done in the same style as the first one?
Yeah. I would love to see it on the Switch. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've got 8-player LAN capabilities. That'd be nice. Or, as Trav was saying...
I was saying, one of my big problems with the multiplayer on the GameCube was that it's all 4 players on this screen, which doesn't matter how big your TV is, it's a tiny screen to have 4 people running around. And the camera's always focused in on the chalice. We live in the era of, Xbox Gold account, PlayStation Network,
and the new Nintendo Network.
We live in the era of online gaming. There is no reason why we couldn't revisit this idea and, have it so that I'm sitting on my couch at home and he's sitting on his couch at home and we have 4 other friends somewhere else and we start a caravan together like that. And then we'd have the ability to have the camera focused on the character, whoever's playing them. Mm-hmm. Rather than always following the chalice.
But you know what? That's exactly what it would probably be. Because if it's a remastering, that chalice is going to play an important part again. And
yeah, if you get too far away from the chalice, you start taking damage and die from the poisonous air.
So, but I mean, the abilities are out there, and I would love to see another one. I mean, you have an audience, despite what
despite your valiant efforts to alienate them. The audience is there.
And, Square, they've had faults over the years. They're finally starting to learn. Not a lot, but a little bit. So, maybe. Who knows? But,
the potential is there. We believe in you. This one's free. Do it.
Do it. And with that...
I think that wraps it up for now. I'm Vigo. He's Spoony. And
have a good night.